I'd like to welcome everyone to today's episode of Truth. Today's guest, we have a special guest, John Hall, 12-year law enforcement. Today, John's going to go in with, some of the different cases that he's had to handle that were interesting. And, he's also going to go into, some of the different hobbies that, helps with him, overcoming some of the different stresses that, he faces in, his daily activities, plus, some of the other conditions and things like that we'll get into, that John will get into as well, too. And, I also, want to share, I'm going to start doing this on each broadcast as well, too, because, one of my main points in all of this and humanizing the badge, humanizing, first responders, and smashing the stigma for individuals to be able to say that, hey, I'm not okay. I want to provide everybody different hotlines. So, any kind of first responders, law enforcement that are in distress or they just feel like they're alone, there are different hotlines you can call. Cop line, for example, it's ran by, retired law enforcement. There are some active law enforcement that also man the phones. You can dial the 1-800-COP line, which is 1-800-267-5463. And there's another one as well, too. It's Lifeline. It's like the National Suicide Hotline, and that's 800-273-8255. So, I don't want anyone to ever feel that they're alone. My number is 833 here 24/7, which is 833-437-3247. I'm available 24/7. Regardless of how small you think the things are, nothing should ever, reach to the end. That's one of the kind of the talking points that, John's going to be discussing with us today. And, just different ways that, we as individuals can kind of overcome the different stressors, the depression, whether it be depressed in the moment or actually have clinical depression, and, methods that we can overcome that, and encourage everybody to start doing buddy, brother, sister, dispatcher checks, more frequently, just to check in on our fellow officers, fellow law enforcement, fellow dispatchers, fire, EMT, military, all the way around. So, John, thank you again for joining us. And how's the day going for you?
It's going good. Had to work over a little bit, little stress getting here, but otherwise I'm good.
And again, I commend you on that. For some of the viewers at home, John drives 45 minutes. I almost said hours again. 45 minutes just to, go to from, despite the 12, 13-hour shift that he actually pulls as well, too. So I do appreciate you making it home and, giving us this time to kind of, share your life stories with us and different things that may benefit so many others.
There's a couple of things I want to show you first, just because, I'm trying to talk about stuff that's kind of stress, related, stress relief. And this is in no way against what you were saying, trying to help people. I thought this was funny, especially since I'm off duty. Everybody can
methods that we can overcome. Please cancel my subscription to your. Yes, that's awesome. I love that. That is great. But you know what though? It's the you say that, but not your shirt. But I'm saying about me wanting to kind of eliminate some of the different things. But it is the humor in things and us being able to find the humor in things, because even though it's a little comical, there is real life in that though too, because it's just that because we never know another individual's struggles. So when somebody already has so much shit just sitting in their mind, and everybody else is just trying to feed you an issue. I forgot to take my dog to get its haircut today. It's just like, I just fucking somewhere. You know what I mean? So we have to have some kind of humor, amidst all of the chaos that we have going on in our minds, and what's being exposed every day. So, that's I love that shirt.
I think several people get a laugh out of this one too. It's really one of my favorites.
It's for it as the top. World's okayest. That is great. And then, hey, if you want to show the viewers that blanket behind you from My Heroes Wear Blue that you got.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see the full thing, but it's actually got my name. It's best you can see it, and it's got my call number on it. And My Hero Wears Blue. They've got some awesome stuff.
Awesome. And then, so I know you kind of wanted to kind of go over, and share some of the different interesting episodes that you've kind of experienced through your service.
Yeah, and some of these they're really gonna seem minor. I think a lot of people involved in law enforcement will kind of find the humor in it, but that's the thing about us. We really have to find humor in some of the most minor things. You can have the most stressful, yes, you can have the most stressful shift, but if you can make, kind of light of one of those episodes, it does help everything. Some people won't get them, but I think a lot of people will. It's little stuff. I mean, it helps a lot. It just really does. And some of the worst situations you can find something in, it's not something, people get hurt, people get killed. You're going to find humor in that. That's not it. I had an incident night before last. A guy drove by me with a flat tire, completely flat, pulled in the gas station I was near. I went in to help him, and it was a van that he had just bought. And I get out a jack, which is, and I'll stress this, a lot of police issued equipment is not sufficient. I used one of the jacks I had, which came with the car. It's a Dodge Charger. It was a scissors jack, and didn't think it was going to make it work. And stupid me, I was focused on helping this guy. I was like, I'm going to make this work. I jacked it up as far as I could, which was stupid. Don't ever do that with one of those jacks. And, the more you go up, the narrower it gets. My phone's shaking. My washer's turned on, so it's not an earthquake. We're good. But the guy got the tire off, and I knew it wasn't tall enough, but he was trying to get it on. I was trying to help him. The jack slipped, and the van fell. And luckily, he wasn't under it. The tire caught half of his foot, the front part of the tire. So luckily, it didn't hurt him, which help matters. But I see it happen, and I am flipping out immediately. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to help this guy. How bad is he injured? As calm as he could be, he had a friend with him. As calm as he can be, he just said, "Well, boys, it's on my foot." And I couldn't help but kind of laugh because I knew he was okay at that point. But it's just I'm freaking out, and as calm as he can be, he just like, "Well, it's on my foot." What? So that kind of made it easier. I helped the guy as best I could. We couldn't end up changing the tire, but I ended up helping him get where he needed for the night so he could change it the next night. But I mean, sometimes all you can do is as much as you can do. But
and on top of that, though, too, is that you didn't even have to do that. You know what I mean? And that's one of them kind of things that's kind of out of sight, out of mind to a lot of individuals. It's that you can see officers just driving by, people that are just like sitting on the side of the highway, whatever the case. They don't have to stop. I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
anything. No. It's just courtesy. Just hey, everything all right for you? And
and I've had officers absolutely refuse to help somebody change a tire. I'm like, man, that's crazy. That's one, people want to thank me. I've had people want to give me money. I'm like, no, it's my job, which it is, but at the same time, I could get away with not doing it. It's not just a job; it's me. I like to help people. I like to try to make things better for them, a better day, at least, hey, somebody cares and they did try to help. I could have just kept doing whatever I was doing, never pulled out, never tried to help the guy. And honestly, nothing would have ever been said, but I feel it's kind of, my job. It's as an employee of a police agency and as a person, it's my job to try to help somebody because sometimes that's all you got.
100%, and I mean, and that's a great mindset to have too, and during our last broadcast, we spoke, of something similar to, and we spoke of something similar to that, to where, it was what if you did have those days to where it didn't matter, or they'll be fine, or they might have AAA or insurance. I mean, it's just that, a lot of times it's not hard to fall into that state of mind, especially with, fatigue, as we spoke, of before, and everything else too, or, different pressures of at home, or different stressors of the job, or, the last call you just handled, because there's so much that's being processed from one call to the next. You got family life going on, you got, tiredness from, just so many hours and everything else. So,
and it can make a simple call seem a whole lot harder than it is. I was patrolling the highway, which our highway is in our city, but it's actually, we have about 6 miles of state highway. It's in our city limits, but it's actually outside of the city physically. None of our businesses run that highway. So really, we don't even have to go down it, but I try to go down it at least a couple of times, every shift just to make sure. And I had run across a guy. He had had a flat tire. I believe it was a BMW, it was somewhere along those lines. And I asked him about it. He said, yeah, I got a flat tire, but I don't
got a good tip coming.
Yeah. I had asked him about it. He said, yeah, I got a flat tire, but I don't have the lug nut key. Some of these cars have a lock and lug nut. If you don't have that key, you can't get that lug nut off. You're not getting that wheel off. I was like, well, let me look at it. So I looked at it. It ended up being the lug nut. What appeared to be the lug nuts was just a cap. You could unscrew it and you take those caps off. Then you see the lug nuts just because the caps appear more appealing. I had that tire changed out in about 20 minutes, and I asked him, I said, man, how long have you been here? He's like, I've been over here over an hour waiting on somebody. I mean, I know it kind of makes you feel dumb, but you don't realize what it is. I mean, 20 minutes, he was in and out, but had I not showed up and offered to help, where we are can take hours for a AAA or somewhere like that that's not local to get there. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's like funny about that, but it's not really funny. It's like with today's generation, I'm not trying to beat nobody down or anything else like that, but like, with a lot of the millennials, and I'm not blaming them per se, but like with educational systems and things like that. I mean, well, shit, even when you and I went to school, they didn't teach you with the basic life fundamentals, such as vehicle maintenance and, taxes and things that are like really life essential, and I mean, so everybody's on their phones and things like that. I mean, people have to Google how to change a tire. I mean, it sounds stupid and it sounds unbelievable, but it's like, I mean, a lot of people don't even know how to change a tire, and it's a life essential. It's survival basically. So.
Yeah, but I mean, how would have me and you ever got through life without having algebra and geometry?
I know, right? If you take a squared times x minus 4z.
Who ever introduced letters into math? Like, I had to learn the alphabet. Why do I have to learn it again?
Yeah, and it's and so many different changes and stuff too. And it's like with shorthand nowadays. Nobody speaks sentences anymore. Everything's the TTYS. It's like, come on, what do you talk to you soon?
Like, how did you come up with this abbreviation or cursive? You remember whenever we were young, we had the secret writing pens and the invisible ink. Now all you got to do is write in cursive. They don't know it.
That's a new secret language, cursive.
It is.
So Ralph, you'll be getting a secret decoder ring.
And that's kind of, I'm trying to lighten up this one a little bit and show what you can have humor with, and don't be offended by everything. Try to find some kind of humor and stuff, because life is stressful enough. Don't make it more than it has to be, or your head will explode.
Well, people taking things personally is offensive. That's what's offensive. It isn't like the things being discussed, or I mean, there is some dark humor that some may think that goes a little bit too far, but what's offensive is when like people act like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. It's like, well, it's reality. It's good humor. It
is. There's also a line, and some of this has even made me uncomfortable. You want to joke about situations. Some of the stuff you say is not appropriate to say in front of certain people, but I've been on calls where it's been a serious medical, or maybe somebody has, even passed away. And I've heard comments that's made me uncomfortable. I'm like, I know you try to find the best of a situation. I'm not saying that may even be a good thing, but the best of what it could be. But, there's certain times you don't say certain stuff. I'll give you an example. A lady had passed away. At the time, it was not a death. It was kind of a trying to prevent kind of thing. It was kind of a given, but there's still a little hope. They finally got her out where they could work on her, and that, well, she's gone. She's deceased. It happened to be one of our responders' aunts, I believe, and he was there, but he had went outside. And I'm like, man, this sucks. This does. And one of the responders gets on the radio, which he has, and, says, hey, call the coroner. I'm like, damn, dude, you realize that this guy, it's his family, has the radio. He's going to hear you. And as soon as I heard him key up, I basically ran outside and kind of put my arm around the guy. I was like, I'm sorry. She didn't make it. I'm sorry. Kind of gave him a hug. To try to make him feel like, we did care about him versus just hearing on the radio, basically she's dead. And I kind of couldn't believe that he had actually done that. I guess, it was part of his job that he just kind of did it on instinct. But, some of that you've got to have a little bit of compassion and think about what you do beforehand. That one kind of bothered me.
And it should, though, too, because it's, and again, I've had this discussion with many other, fellow law enforcement officers, brothers, sisters, and everything else too, to where, training in the academy, when we go through the academy, it's, you're learning policy, you're learning the physical fitness, you're learning the strategies, different tactics and all the other good stuff. But the mental side is always ignored. What is it?
You're learning what's written down.
Exactly. And there's no mental capacity or processing or, dealing with the traumas on a daily basis, or
showing sympathy.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, or proper etiquette on conveying, oh, hey, I'm sorry, this pastor, oh, he's not going to make it. It's like, damn, it's like, is that, which, it's, some officers, they play that role to try to not get too involved, where their own emotions don't get the best of them. But in the same sense, there's ways of, showing compassion, being empathetic in a way that, can convey it to them to where they're comforted, just because you're there and listening to them and being, receptive of that. And it's vital,
Yes. Example is funerals. I may not know this person, but I'm working the funeral. I may be leading the procession. But if somebody comes up and talks to me, I'm going to speak to them with sympathy. I understand the situation. I have been through these feelings before. I understand it, versus I didn't know this person. I'm just here to drive. You can't be like that and be a good officer. Just as simple as that.
And then, on top of that too, and a lot of things that, the civilian sector, kind of ignores as well too, is when, say we responded to an incident, and, you and I touched on this before, as far as like time frames go, to where, people don't want to get out of the way, regardless of the lights being on, sirens blasting and everything else. You get there late, you're not able to, save an individual, or, when dispatch, sent us out somewhere, we didn't know that, paramedics also needed to accompany us and everything else as well too. And then that blame game about, the surviving parties of, oh, you didn't get here fat. That is a large trauma, because then again, going back to, the last conversation you and I had as well too, about the, second guessing, whether our superiors or anybody else is like, well, hey, maybe I could have gotten there faster, just because of them saying that, like, oh, well, if you would have got here sooner, or, why couldn't you have done more? And, they probably don't mean it, but it's just that sense of grief that they're experiencing in that live moment. A a lot of civilians don't understand that, we as individuals, or, in the law enforcement sector, also experience those emotions too. It's not like we're just like, oh, hey, well, they're dead, and, sorry about your luck. I mean, there is a, like you just said, that kind of compassion and empathy as well. So
there is, and I wish people could understand this too. I understand the emotion. Hey, you could have got here faster. That's one of the biggest things. You're right. It doesn't matter how fast I drive. I could have got there faster. I could have also been in a wreck, hurt or killed myself, been in a wreck, hurt or killed somebody else. There's kind of there's a medium you have to make. And like my dad taught me, if you can't get there, you cannot help anybody else.
That's a great point. And it's the same thing with just, us caring for ourselves mentally and physically. If we can't care for ourselves, we can't do for our families or anybody else too. And it's the same sense to where, if we're not doing everything that we're doing, we're not going to be able to, be the peacekeepers. You know what I mean? It's just, it's not even going to be plausible, period.
Well, how many times do you hear about an officer getting killed on the way to a call? It's a tragedy. It is. But at the same time, whatever call they were going to, they didn't help them. They couldn't, because something happened to them because they pushed it too hard.
Well, as a matter of fact, so this shirt right here, this is Officer Michael Magley. February 17th of this year, he was responding to a call, and he was hit and killed by a drunk driver on his way to respond to that call. And then, because of that happening, the result of the call he was responding to, it's a perfect example. And it's one of the things that's out of sight, out of mind to the civilian sector. It's like, well, why didn't this happen? Well, real life happens to the law enforcement sector as well, too. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of gets to a tunnel vision mind. This is the only thing that's on my mind, but there's tons of other things that can happen. And like I said, if you can't get there, you can't help them. So I may try, for lack of better words, I may be balls out trying to get to a call. And if I wreck, if I hurt somebody, if something happens and I don't get there, they're worse off now because I can't help whatsoever.
That's when you needed the DeLorean.
Spoke up earlier, fall off.
So, yeah,
but yeah, I would like to share a couple of stories I found. Like I said, they may be very minor. You may not find humor in them, being what you're familiar with law enforcement, but I did. We spoke about the depression. Your memory is bad. I should have done what somebody told me to make a diary, basically, of calls I wished I had. There's many, many things in my mind. I know that was something interesting, something humorous, something important, but I can't remember it because I didn't log it down. My memory is horrible, but these stuck out. For one reason or another, they stuck out. Here's an example for something very minor. We had a juvenile runaway, which she came back, she was safe. Nothing happened to her. And as we were talking to her mother, she told us, said that, I know it was her boyfriend that got her. I said, okay. I said, did you see them together? She looks at me. It had to be me. I had a partner with her. It had to be me. She looks at me and said, no, I never verbally saw them together.
Verbally.
If I look at a partner, I'm going to lose it and it's going to not be professional, but I cannot. I'm just staring at the ground like, I understand, ma'am.
You didn't verbally see them together.
And it caught me. It did. And another one, and I do not advocate this whatsoever. It's dangerous. Don't do it. It's happened. I know it has to many people, but for a long time when I worked with the sheriff's office, we rode two up in a car, which usually for hours we were by ourselves is one big reason. But we had got an extra patrol. You need to go out to this county road on the mountain. A lot of people are not familiar with mountains, especially around here. They're rural areas. There's not a lot of people around. So we went to this county road, supposed to be a lot of drug activity. So we hide where people can't see us. We're watching the road. Nothing is coming by. And my partner, who I swear had narcolepsy, he dozed off. I'm like, okay, well, I'm watching. And I got tired and I dozed off. I was like, that's bad. Don't do that. But he woke up. He's like, all right, there's nothing going on here. Let's go somewhere else. We pull out on the road, start going down the road. We have a flat tire. Both of us, right off the bat, was thinking, how do we explain this to our superior that we got our tires slashed with both of us sitting in this patrol car? That's like, how did your door get taken off while you were sitting in the car? It's something you don't want to have to explain. Luckily, it was a tire defect, but that had us worried for a few minutes.
We drove past we went over metal shrapnel and it just popped the tire.
Somehow it hit the complete sidewall of it. I don't know. But it's small stuff like that you have to find some in. I'd actually, we went back to the memory part. I actually wrote down a bunch of notes to kind of go over. So if you see me looking over, that's what it is.
I appreciate that. And John, I commend you for that. And this is the type of, atmosphere that I'm actually trying to develop with this, because, the things you go through and the things that are important to you, it's not just you. The things you're talking about is going to affect thousands of other individuals. And there's going to be thousands of other individuals that, hey, you know what? I know what he's saying. And that's, again, how we're going to be able to overcome, a lot of officers feeling alone, a lot of officers not wanting to address something that may be clinical depression, a lot of officers not wanting to address that, certain shit is bothering them. So it's in finding these, good humors that we have that it makes it happen. That's why, I want you to get to your thing, but I want to share one thing real quick is that, I always try to, encourage, officers to stop in the local businesses, and having chat with the local owners and things like that, because just having general conversations like that, it can lighten the day. And, you get to share stories about, maybe some of the crazy shit that they've experienced, and it's just, and it helps lighten that mood, and it keeps the humanity, within, the actual career. So
it does. And I'm actually lucky. We have a small town. We only have one gas station, and it is owned by a Indian guy. We call PK. And that's what he wants to be called. The reason why is because he has a long Indian name. It's hard to pronounce, and when people try to pronounce it, they called him Pancake. So we call him PK, and it's great. I love him. He's very laid back, and he's from India. He has the accent, but he's very well versed in English. He's very well versed in American everything. He's just a great guy, and I don't know why it is, but it's hilarious to hear somebody in an Indian accent cussing. I couldn't believe he even said this. Now, he's the business owner. He's running the desk, and this guy walks in, and he's wearing a pink shirt, and he should have known that PK does not have a filter. He's like, hey, PK, how do you like my shirt? In front of everybody in the store, he goes, you look like pussy. I was like, ask that again to him.
Oh my God.
But he's cool, like you said, stopping in a business. He's cool. He's laid back. He'll talk to you. If you got a question, if you want to look for somebody, he'll tell you. And I don't know why, but it's just hilarious hearing an Indian guy call somebody a motherfucker.
Yeah, so it is, and it is though too, because it does lighten the mood. Because and a lot of them know that it kind of sounds like that too, and they do it for good humor, and a lot of times too.
He does, and he's an awesome guy. He's friendly as he can be, and that makes stopping in and talking a whole lot easier. Versus some of these people, this is my job, pay for it, get out. He's really cool. He's very in the society. He talks to people, he cuts up with them, he's friendly, he knows all kind of stuff. That makes it a whole lot better, and it makes it, kind of a stress relief to stop in and talk to him. That he can make you laugh even when he's really not trying to, but he understands that. He knows you're not laughing at him. He's making you laugh. And that helps a lot. That's another one of those small things. Just somebody that owns a business that's cool with you.
Awesome. And then is that something that like is ongoing with like is it a frequent visit with old Pancake? But
it is. It's that's where we get our gas from. So if you drive any length of time at night, that you go every night, every shift, whatever, to get gas. And he's not always working, but probably about 90% of the time he's there. So
with it being only one gas station, I mean, is he 24/7?
No, actually, it's only from well, I'm not sure in the morning, say maybe 4 or 5 in the morning until 10 at night. After 10 at night, there's nothing open in our city. We have the surrounding cities that you can go to for stuff, but in our city, it's shut down. It's kind of surprising being the only one there, but I don't run those stations. We got a small community, and it is hard to stay open when you've not got much business, which he doesn't like because he likes getting paid as frequently as he can.
Don't we all?
I do. Frequency does not increase. And
got to increase the breeding in the population.
Sometimes that's not always a good thing.
Hard to know.
You know where it starts at. And I got a couple of speeding ones. One, if you're gonna make an excuse for speeding, make it a good one. Make it a believable one. Make me laugh. Something. I clocked a girl at 103 miles an hour, right at our city limits on the highway. I turned around and it was within. We've got 6 miles of highway, so it was within about 2 miles of the end of our city limits, which actually goes into Tennessee, which complicates things. But I stopped her, and usually I'm like, hey, how are you doing? You got your driver's license? One of those things is like, why are you driving like that? It's just straight up front, why the hell are you doing this? Well, my car just rides so smooth.
I didn't know I was going 103.
Yeah, like,
I didn't recognize everything when
you just passed for going slow. Their car didn't ride smooth, is what it is, right? She got a ticket. And people want to get defensive of why are you treating me like this? Why are you being cautious around me? I've lived here my whole life. I've got that. Great. That doesn't tell me your past, and I don't know. Well, I always drive this. How am I supposed to know what everybody drives? I stopped the guy, and there's a little humor in this, but I stopped the guy for speeding. Nice gentleman, well dressed, decent car, well spoken. Enough, I went back and wrote him a ticket, and I come back up there, give it to him, and I was like, hey, yeah, you were speeding. You tried to slow down, but you didn't slow down quick enough. He's like, yeah. He points to his dash as a radar detector. So, you need to invest in a better one of those, don't you? Said, no, I need to quit speeding. Okay, yeah, good enough. When I start talking to him, never would have guessed this. He had just got out of prison for murder. Well dressed, well spoken, polite. I would have never guessed it. So don't be offended when we kind of act suspicious of you because we don't know you. Even though you may appear slouchy, you may appear well dressed, we don't know. He had just got out of prison. He had spent, I think, 35 or 36 years in prison for a murder. And I don't know the details of it, but I don't know if that was justified. I don't know if it wasn't. But it's kind of a surreal moment of like, oh crap, we know that we don't know who we're talking to, but that's a surreal moment. Like, oh shit, we really don't. And one of the most polite individuals that I've dealt with. So, when we do deal with you, don't think it's because of the way you look. It's because we don't know you. We don't know your past. We can't tell by looking at you.
Well, another thing too, and it's people argue with me about this all the time as well too. But kind of going back to the training aspect of things, to where there's a difference between being biased in profiling someone, but in law enforcement, profiling is a necessity. We have to be able to read, if someone has suspicious activity, or, why are they acting a certain way? Why are they jittering? Why are shuffling around hands in pockets? I mean, there's so many different things that, play into effect upon that profiling. It's how law enforcement keeps communities safe. It's how predictive, crime is addressed. It's in that profiling, and you always have the communities or the media, trying to spin it on its profiling because of race, religion, creed, whatever the case may be, but it's not. It's based on specific profiling, based on real numbers, based on what we say, and you're right. You don't know that suit, tie, everything else. Walking up to you, you don't. That person can underneath that suit and tie have an arsenal that they're doing a suicide bombing. And it's just, you don't know these things just by looking, but you have to do your best in that profiling of that moment, of the situation, of the surroundings, and everything else too. So,
well, people use the word profiling to piss other people off. Mm-hmm. They don't have to give a reason. They say profiling, and you know what that goes to, and it's not. I don't want to use the word profiling. It is the word I'm looking for. It's paying attention to detail. This, what I see going on here is usually consistent with this kind of illegal activity. These type cars that come through here are usually involved in drug-related activity, are usually related to violence, whatever. It's observation.
It's like associating activities to certain crimes and things like that.
Yes, and if you're a known drug dealer or you've been arrested 17 times for something, that's when we're watching your car.
Chances are.
But that does play into it. It's observation. It's not profiling, but they like to use that term, profiling.
Observation. There's that's the word I was trying to throw out there as well too.
Yeah, and it goes back to you don't know people. Even when you know people, you don't know people. There was a officer.
Look how many crimes are committed of family on family, or friend on friend, or friend on family, and that just says it right there that you think you know somebody, and it's like knife in the back, knife in the back, knife in the back. Here they are.
Yeah, and that's honestly a lot of our violent crimes is known to each other. There's rarely ever a just random occurrence of violence around where I work and I live, but I live very rural. There's not even a police department here. It's county. But where I live, there's not really much goes on. I can't even see a neighbor from my house, which I love. And I love that it's not where I work, because I can work, I can go home. I don't have to worry about turning around and there's somebody behind my back that I've arrested and I've pissed off. But you drive, I think from where I live, you drive about 45 minutes and there's a fairly large city. And this has been probably about 10 years ago, I guess. There was an officer got killed. And he knew the guy. It was a DUI. The guy, they went to arrest him for DUI. He knew this officer. He had actually, from my understanding, been in jail before several times. He would ask for this officer, hey, can you have him come back here, talk to me? I don't know what those were about, but he would ask, for him to talk to him. At that particular moment, I guess he knew, this is, however, DUI, I'm going to prison. In his mind, my life's over. So he was sitting with his arms crossed, just like that. And two officers, him and one officer, leaned down to grab him under the arm and pick him up. And when they did that, all he had to do, he had a 2-shot, I think a 22 in his hand. All he had to do when they leaned down, let's see if I can get this right, is he had the gun in his hand right there. The gun is in his face, and he shot him and killed him. Once again, I see this guy. I see his hands, but he had a gun in him. That's how minor it can be. And he knew the guy. They had talked before. But in that instance, I guess a moment of panic that my life's over. I'm going to have to do something. And they ended up, he tried to shoot the other officer. He wasn't able to. They got him, and arrested him. But it's that minor, I know this guy. I'm relaxed. I don't have any worries with him. I'm familiar with him. It's not that case all the time, and even with the hands, show me your hands. Let me see your hands. You're still watching them because even though you see them, they can still hide something in it. All it takes is this right here to hold something in their hand. But I see their hand that there's nothing in it. Not always the case. You got to be careful with that. And even with familiar people, they can still have that moment where they snap. I've got to make an action against them or I'm going to be in big trouble. And another one, a story I want to tell is a guy.
It's just like this right here. Like you wouldn't know that, I have a knife in hand. You know what
Exactly.
I mean? And with these knives, I can just flick it out and, blades exposed and things like that. And it's just like a flick of a hand. And then all of a sudden it's just, you know what I mean? And it's not safe for people. And it's just like, even with, law enforcement, it's one of the things too, I'm trying to put in policy to where, it doesn't have to be regulated, but I'm a big advocate of the 1911, series on the pistols because it has the double safety trigger. It has the grip safety. And then it also has the chamber safety. And also when you're like pushing for the depression to where, it won't fire if it's like, chest on or whatever the case is. And it's just, for officer safety, because you don't know how many times officers trying to draw a firearm, because of it being a scramble in there to where their own firearm is discharged on themselves. And it's just, there's so many different safety precautions, but, it's going into them instances like you just said to where you don't know. People go, well, I don't have none. I'm free.
Yeah.
But it's serious moments, and and then and the media don't help out none, because then all it takes is one person to see some stupid viral video about them questioning officers. Why is your hand on your holster? Why is your hand on? I feel threatened. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm walking up to. That's why my, you know what I mean? And it's just there's nothing wrong with that. That's procedure. You know what I mean? And it's just, and that needs to be, clarified because the real side of it is if somebody does get detained and, they get their day in court, the age-old law is the fact that ignorance of the law is no excuse for violating the law. So the same thing should be applied in understanding what police procedure is. That way, there's no question about why officers are approaching your vehicle with hand on holster, you know what I mean, for their own safety and for the safety of any other civilians that may be around. You may have, passengers in your vehicle that we may have to, it's just there's so many different factors that people are so blind to and want to try to play these games and the media feeds into it. And then you start seeing these different, decreases in funding, which makes your job harder. They have all these other different restrictions, makes your job harder. And what they're doing, and it's disgusting, is they're putting the benefit into the criminal's hands. And it's so reversed and it's so ignorant that it's anyway.
It's almost, you've got the innocent until proven guilty. It's almost nowadays the officer was wrong until proven otherwise.
Yeah. And that's I'm glad you put it like that, because that's basically how things are progressing right now. Or that wasn't good. Digressing right now. You know what I mean? It is, and it's just like that to where, oh well, hey, prove that you follow procedure, to the letter, Officer Hall. It's fucking crazy. It's like,
yeah, and you can literally be like, okay, here's my procedure. Well, I'm not going to read that. That's what you asked.
Did you see that lady just here recently that God, who was it? She ran some kind of podcast or some shit. I apologize about my language, but she was running some kind of podcast and ending the podcast, she said, fuck the police. She was doing shots while she was doing the podcast. She takes off. She's driving. She ran over, a law enforcement officer, killed him. And then in the pursuit, she tried to run over other law enforcement officers. And then they show her coming out of court. oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. When it's like the premeditation was in her podcast that she did before she even entered her vehicle the same day. But then again, it was did the officers invoke her to do that? And that should never be the case. I mean, and that is the America that we live in today, and it's fucking disgusting. It really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were running from the police and hurt somebody. It's the police's fault.
You see that other officer that got fired. He lost his pension. He lost everything because he did a pursuit. And they said, well, you shouldn't have pursued. And I followed everything in policy. He was a criminal. I pursued. And anyway.
I didn't tell him, hey, run from me and let me chase you.
I didn't tell you, hey, don't comply.
Yeah. I want to run over this, and it kind of ties back into my, this individual, and it ties into complacency, which I fell into, and I had everything I needed to know not to, but I did. We had an individual that was 1096. For people that don't know, 1096 for most places is a mental person. They have mental problems. And we had a misdemeanor warrant, which was basically, I think, maybe a harassment warrant. It was a legal warrant, so don't get me wrong, but it was a warrant to get him arrested, to get him mentally evaluated. So I find him at one of the businesses, the store I find him at, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to arrest this guy. I call for backup. Rarely ever do I have backup, but I did that day, and I called for backup. Well, he starts walking away. I was like, hey, man, come here. Let me talk to you. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Kept walking. I was like, come here. I want to talk to you. Leave me alone. In my mind, this guy's got enough. He's about to run, and I'm not going to catch him. So I take off running up towards him. I shouldn't have done that. When I took off running, my caution went out the window. All I could focus on is getting to him, because in my mind, he's running. Guess what? He didn't run. He stopped. And as soon as I get to him within reaching distance, about to put hands on him, I see his hips slightly turn. Now, I don't know how I've seen this, because I didn't expect it. It was last second. I seen his hips turn, and I seen his right hand go back behind him like he's about to throw a pitch. It was all the way back. And all I remember is I threw my hands up. And I didn't even feel the punch, but I remember seeing his hands a couple of times. He was trying to hit me. Somehow I blocked him, and I don't know how, but he took off running, and I just drew my taser. I followed him, and I shot him full stride. Looking back, I'm not going to say it's funny. You can make your own decision on this, but looking back, he was full stride. When I shot him, his feet stopped, went up over his head, and it went face first, like a handstand, into the ground when I shot him with it.
You ever watch Ridiculousness?
Exactly.
Scorpion?
Yes, that was him. And he ended up taking a couple of rides. For what, people don't know, a ride on a taser is 5 seconds. That's automatic. That's not me holding the trigger down. That's an automatic. Then it will shut off. Every time I was pissed because he tried to assault me. And every time it stopped, he just automatically tried to push himself up. Like, hit it again. He's already tried to assault me. I'm not going to give him a second chance. Finally, we get him handcuffed. We raise him up, and he's bleeding all over his face. I think his eyebrow, his nose, his face. Of course, he landed face first. He's bleeding everywhere. And we ended up, my partner was like, hey, man, he threw something at you. And I remember looking down. I'm like, I see a cigarette butt. Did he throw a cigarette butt at me? He wasn't smoking. I was like, okay, whatever. So I go back to the gas pumps to get my camera. And a lady there was like, whatever he threw at you is over by the store. Okay, so I go, and we were halfway in the middle of the parking lot. I go all the way over to the store and look, and there is a rock the size of a brick that he threw at me. It wasn't a punch that his hand went back on. He had that rock in his hand, and he should have been a professional pitcher. And the only thing that kept it from hitting me is right here.
And he probably didn't even mean to throw it. He probably meant to do full impact on you. Realistically,
it could have. And either way,
just lost grip.
Yeah, either way, it would have disfigured me. It may have disabled me, permanently, because it was hard hit. It bounced one time on the ground and went all the way up against the door. And like I said, we were halfway out in the parking lot. This is a big parking lot. So we get him checked out. He refuses medical attention. Now, I want everybody to bear in mind, this is a mental subject. Mental, not I have some weird thoughts. So, which he did, but we get him to I get him to the jail. They're refusing. Like, no, the way he looks, we're not taking him. You got to take him to the hospital, even though he refused treatment. So I take him. We get him checked out. It actually cracked his eye socket when he landed. Now, I want people to think about this. It cracked his eye socket. It, basically fractured a bone in his face when this happened. But that looked okay to people because I tased him. Now, had I swung at him, hit him, blacked his eye, and that was it, now that's going to look a lot worse, ain't it? Even though it's less damage to him. It's about perception.
100%. And another thing too, and I want to touch base on this as well too, for a lot of the viewers and everything else too, because especially with, I'm not going to say hatred, but a lot of it is hatred towards law enforcement and disinformation about law enforcement, disinformation about why we may choose to use lethal force opposed to the tasers and things like that. A lot of people have misconceptions about the effectiveness of tasers, because like you just said, but when you're dealing with individuals that it doesn't affect, I mean, you can have individuals that are high on drugs to where the tasers, rendered ineffective. And on top of that, there's only so many charges every taser is able to hold before it's dissolved.
Most of the tasers, their cartridge has one shot. There's a new one now that has two, but when I shoot that one shot, if it fails, that taser's done. There's two prongs for people that don't know.
It's like a little fish hook.
They're spread, so wherever it hits the person, here to here, that's where that current goes. It's like grabbing a hold of two live wires. That's where that current goes from where those two are. The closer you are, the narrower that spread is. So if I'm really close to you, I may hit here and here. Anybody can fight through that little current. The closer you are, the narrower it is. So the further out you are, the more effective it is. But also, if I miss one of those prongs, it's not effective.
Not effective at all.
There is no current going through that. Hey, I use my one cartridge. Now I have to go to something else.
And that's why I wanted to clarify this for the viewers at home, because, it's again, what the media doesn't, they don't share the truth. It's a misinformation to make you look wrong, to make every other law enforcement officer look wrong. Why I chose to smash somebody across the back with a billy club opposed to utilizing the taser. It's because of instances like that. And, if the taser was fired already and things like that, that's like half the videos you watch. It's clips. It isn't from beginning of encounter, them assaulting you, the pursuit. Now all of a sudden somebody with a camera is watching that. Now you finally caught him after pursuit and watching the proximate end. And it's just like, it's, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And that's why I want to kind of cover some of these things to humanize, the realities of the dangers that law enforcement officers across the, nation face, regardless if it's a traffic stop, domestic dispute, responding to a murder, responding to a rape, they're all the same. I don't care if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, the risk is always going to be there, regardless of what call you're going to. Okay. So when you're trying to process everything of what's going on, like you just, his back's turned to you, you don't know what he has in his hand. How are you supposed to process? How do I approach this subject? And there's so many plays in the mind that, when you got these sideliners clicking through their TV. Oh, look at this guy. I can't believe he did that. It's just so much ignorance out there to where, I like addressing the realities, that kind of brings it home for a lot of the individuals that, I don't call people dumb or ignorant or things like that. But, if you ignore facts, you're ignorant. I don't care what anybody says. You know what I mean? But
a saying that I've heard that if you think about it, really is true. You can teach the ignorant, you can't teach the stupid. And ignorance really comes down to lack of knowledge
and disregard for what you've been given.
Yeah, and you know, why did you hit him in the face with a nightstick or a baton? Why did you do that? That was excessive. Well, the reason why I did that is because I didn't want to kill him. But you don't look at that. Well, you could have shot him with a taser. You could have pepper sprayed him. No, my next option was to kill him, so I tried not to. But they don't want to view it from that angle. So, you know, they want to play it off as worse than it is.
Or any kind of consequence.
And
not necessarily death. I was responding to one of the comments. You know, the gentleman said that, you know, bottom line, if you comply, you won't die. And it's true, but it's not even just death, though. If you comply, you know, you won't have to experience the taser. You won't have to experience the billy club or the. I love the sticks with the tasers, the cattle prods on them. Those are a blessing. But you know, it's just that, you know, if you didn't do anything, why does resistance exist? That's my argument across the board. I don't care if Jesus was standing here. You know, why are you resisting if you're innocent? Let me just discuss this with you, and we'll handle it in a civil manner. You know,
and I'll say straight up that I do my job and I do it as best I can. I would never do this. I never have done this, but just say that I made up a charge. I want to arrest you. I don't like you. I made up a charge and I'm going to arrest you. And this is just for an example. Like I said, I wouldn't do it. I have more integrity than that. But go along with me. Let me arrest you. Let me take you to jail. Go to court. Discuss it there. You know, and don't chance you getting hurt, me getting hurt, making it worse. You've got your time in court. Don't fight me on scene. It bothers me to say, you know, make up a charge. It bothers me to even say that. But just an example, just do what the officer says. There's not going to be violence. Nobody's going to get hurt. Go to jail, get out, go to court. That's where you can discuss it, you know, and the judge can be like, hey, you don't have enough evidence for this. This shouldn't happen. Great. You know, that's settled. Neither one of us got hurt. You know, it couldn't have went better.
You know, and to be devil's advocate on this, okay? Because I'm not trying to justify making up a charge. I'm not trying to justify wrongfully incarcerating somebody. But what I'm saying is when facing an instance, if I'm facing a subject and you know, there being resistance or, you know, going against anything that I'm trying to address to them. Okay. It's just that, okay, well, hey, the resistance, obstruction, you know, there are ways to place that on them. And like you just said, but in doing so, a lot of times, you know, slowing down the moment gives both parties time to think. As you and I have talked about before, how, you know, you're able to utilize, and, you know, it's a blessing. And, you know, I pray that a lot more officers did as you do, as far as having a conversation with the subjects on the way to the station. You know, because that ride can do a lot for a lot of individuals, because that's what it could come out to. Hey, look, you know, it really didn't have to go here. You know, what was going on prior to our encounter, or, you know, what really happened and things like that. But, you know, when people are in fogged minds or the heat of the moment, you know, sometimes it has to come to a moment to where it's not making up a charge. It's still something that is relevant to the moment, that, hey, if, you know, if the DA, the judge, anybody, you know, or the grand jury doesn't agree with what I've placed as far as my order on your arrest, it can be dismissed and everything else. But at least at that moment, I saved lives for a second. You know what I mean? I allowed you to think about what it was that you were doing, of what caused the encounter, because maybe next time you'll consider not doing what caused the encounter. You know, and it's just
and when you escalate a situation, especially to violence with an officer, most of them will pretty much tell you, I don't give a shit what you have to say after that. You know, it really is. And that doesn't even come down to just policing. You know, anybody, if it escalates to a fight, I don't want to discuss anything afterwards. You know, this is how it is. The same way with the 18-year-old I had arrested that I talked to on the way to the station that I ended up helping. Had he fought me that night, I wouldn't have cared to talk to him and discuss anything with him. but he didn't. He went along with me, and now, okay, you're cool with me. We'll talk about your issues. We'll talk about what we can do. And let me throw this in before I forget it. Associated with the that story, the funny part of it. When we got back to the station, we got or station the county jail. We booked him in. It was felony charge for assault on a police officer, and he was actually so mentally disturbed that they could not put him back in population. They had to keep him up in the holding cells, which some people call the drunk tank. They had to keep him in there the entire stay at the jail because he could not be put in population. I made an impression on him because at the time we wore the dark navy blue Class A uniforms, which, for lack of being able to explain it to people that don't know, the proper looking uniforms, the old school button up shirt and all that. And they said every time an officer, did not matter where they worked, every time an officer walked in that jail, because they had to go past him that was wearing the same color uniform, they started screaming my name. Every time he would start screaming, J Hall, J Hall. So I made an impression on him. Not necessarily the best in his mind, I'm sure, but he was bad enough that, you know, locally, usually they'll send you to a minor mental facility. They'll throw some pills at you and they'll let you go. They actually sent him off and committed him to a hospital, and that's been 5 years ago, and he's still gone. That's how bad he was. And
Well,
that also,
it's just like that, you know, and that's another thing I want to point out to viewers as well, too, is, you know, something that starts off in a bad instance, you know, sometimes becomes blessings in a lot of individuals' lives, you know, because, you know, potentially you did save that individual's life, not only that, you know, they're able to receive treatment themselves, you know, their family is able to see that they're receiving the treatment that they've probably needed for quite some time. You may have, you know, saved the lives of anybody else that they could have injured in their mental incapacitation, you know, and it's things like that that, you know, the communities don't understand how one little instance does affect the quality of, you know, your community, the surrounding communities, you know, the world itself by just one action, you know, and it's things like that that, you know, individuals, you don't know how many individuals have came to me after a fact, like, and I'm kind of glad I had that time out, you know, and the same thing with you. It's like, you know, you change somebody's life ultimately, even though that, you know, other people are like, fuck, you change your life for the better. They're incarcerated for 5 years or whatever the case is, but at least they're getting that help. Because if they were able to care for self, they wouldn't still be there. I mean, it's not like they just hold them there like, you're here forever, you know, show us progression in mental capacity, and you're more than free to go, you know, so.
and he lived in a house with no power, no water. All the windows were busted out because of him fighting with himself. He busted all of them out. That's how he was living. That's how his mental status was. So in all reality, he has a better quality of life in a mental facility than he did in his own house.
100%. And I want to ask you something, if you don't mind. You don't have to answer it, but, you know, because with you being in, you know, a smaller town, right? And, you know, instances where you have run-ins with individuals. I know that, you know, you've blessed us with sharing about the fact that, you know, you haven't had like, you know, the major incidents and things like that, but, you know, has it ever happened to where, you know, individuals that, you know, you've had to incarcerate because of, you know, obviously, you know, the wrongdoing that they were doing, you know, have you ever had a run-in with somebody that ultimately had to be detained, you know, for a moment or anything like that in a negative sense? Or has it just been, you know, the thank you that you've received here recently?
You know, in all honesty, where I work, mainly due to the way I do my job, I do it correctly, do it legally, and I'm respectful to people. There's honestly only a very few people in that city that just have an issue with me. And it's not necessarily me, it's the police department. As they said, I'm part of the police department. So there you go. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how I'm trying to explain things, how nice I am to them. They don't care.
The Hatfield McCoys.
Yes.
It's the truth though. It's just like, it's the one is the whole, and one, it's you're part of a family, and it's the, hey, you're guilty by association. And that's unfortunate.
It's the mindset. And you can turn around, and there's a guy that I've arrested several times, several felonies. And I'm the reason that he is a felon now. Now, I think he may still be on parole, but I'm the reason he's a felon. But every time he sees me, he talks to me because the way I treated him. He knows what he did. He knows what he didn't do. He knows how I treated him. And he talks to me just fine every time he sees me. So,
hey, how'd you catch me? That way I can kind of not do that again.
They can be, they could try to be sneaky, be like, hey, what can I do next time that, maybe I shouldn't have had that back door you came in. I'm trying to think of what else I've got. I got time. I've got some that I do want to do in a different segment, but talking hobbies and stress release. Last time. Exactly. They'll see that. Last time I kind of played it off. I was like, there's not a whole lot I do. I talk to the people I know, and that helps, and that does extremely a lot. And I didn't think about it because I've really got out of doing this. And it may sound weird to a lot of people, but I will actually paint Friday the 13th masks, Jason masks. I will paint them, and it seems weird, but at the same time, it's kind of the same as doing paintings. You can do what you want, and I didn't think about this, but it kind of makes sense. Jason is, when you think about Jason, you probably think about evil, bad person. And to me,
why does he do it though? There's always an underlying cause to that.
There is, but like with the mask, that's what you associate with above all else. And I thought about it, and this kind of makes sense to me that I'm taking that evil and I'm making it what I want. It seems minor. I'm painting it how I want, but I'm making that evil vision how I want. I can control it in a sense.
I like that.
And I'm self-taught. It's nothing professional, but I just wanted to show a couple of examples of what I do. And I got at it for a long time. I really kind of got down. I didn't want to do much. I'd come home and that was about it. I talked to, my friends that I have, and that was about it. And recently I've kind of got back into it, and I just kind of wanted to show some examples. And I start with a blank mask, a white mask.
And I've seen some, and I mean, it really is amazing what you go. I mean, the progress, and you bless us with the step by step. Because you did that Slipknot mask as well too. That was just the clay mold. You formed it all the way up, and I've seen the Jason mask where it was like almost like steel, and it's amazing what you do. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and it is a progression, and it's something that's kind of self-satisfying with the fact of you're seeing how you are progressing and doing something. Like I said, the exact thing of it, painting the mask may be weird, but I'm seeing progression of how I'm making this go. I'm making a finished product out of something that wasn't there. This just happens to be, what I got into, and strangely enough, I got into this because of my 5-year-old, which is, it sounds crazy even to me, even though I know. Thank you, YouTube. He knows every horror movie character I think that there has been. And I don't know how some of them, he hasn't watched them on my phone. He hasn't watched them on his mom's phone. I don't know how he knows them. He mentioned Children of the Corn one day. I'm like, how in the hell do you know a movie?
That was back before I was born, boy.
But just to let people know, he has not seen the horror movies. He sees these little clips where people put on skits. A lot of them are fun. Michael Myers, Dancing Michael. He loves Dancing Michael. There's nothing violent about it. You hear Michael Myers, that's it. That's it. He finds the humor in it. He doesn't watch the video of them. And even even in what they do in the movies, he will even tell you stuff like, I know they're not real. I know this is not real. He already has an understanding of, hey, this is just something that's put on. I didn't at that age. I'm like, oh my God, they're coming to get me. But I did want to kind of show a couple just examples of what I do to just to kind of show. Like I said, I start with something blank, something white every time, and I kind of make it what I want, do the details that I want.
That's my ringtone.
And I even have one of those. Finally one, and I do have a mask collection. I'm not going into that because that's a little much for some people to handle, even though it's not crazy. But that's just weird. Well, I'm a cop, so that. But like, this that started with just blank white mask. I kind of made the dirtied up version, and this I made it, kind of like the rusted look.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I was talking about right there. I love that one.
And these are actually all new. I kind of misplaced the ones that I had that you've seen in a move, and it is driving me nuts trying to figure them out. So I'm kind of starting from scratch, but and one more, I wanted to try to do a worn out look, a scratched up look. And I'm not a professional whatsoever when it comes to this stuff.
Are those actual scratches, or is that like paint that make it look like scratches?
It is scratches, but it takes the paint to look like it. If you scratch it up, it's still the same color. And this one, I just kind of got it in my head that I wanted to do one. I wanted to do a law enforcement one. And I had to custom do some of this stuff because they don't make these stickers in this color and they don't make this and that. But this is what I came up with. And if you can see,
if you haven't served, you wouldn't understand. Yes.
And so, all of them I do are not just kind of the macabre looking things. I like to do it for entertainment. It's a canvas is what it comes down to do. And it's something that helps me relax, helps me, de-stress. It's something I can concentrate on that's not a stressful situation. And sometimes you have to grab onto whatever you can because you need that stress relief. You need that concentration on something else, as minor as it may be. If you enjoy it, do it.
And you control your fears in a sense. You know what I mean? It's because that's what these horror things are about is, invoking that fear. And, in what you do, in a sense, you're controlling what that fear is as far as what your vision of, that masked man coming in there, and I think it's beautiful. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, and that's what you think, oh man, Jason's coming after me. He's going to kill me. Well, guess what? I just took his mask and I made it what I wanted. I made him what I wanted to be. So I'm
confused, like, hold on, is that me?
Yeah. But in a sense, I'm controlling a bad situation. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about it to start with, but it kind of does make sense now that I think about it that way.
100%, and that too, and it's keeping your mind off a lot of things too. And like and as you pointed out, like, prior to this broadcast, about the different stress reliefs and everything else that it provides you, because an occupied mind in something positive, kind of eliminates any of the other stressors or depression or the heavy weight that a lot of times our minds may carry and everything as well too, so, it's always good for finding a good avenue to, have that release and, comfort of our minds, rather.
And a good saying, idle hands is the devil's workshop.
Yes, sir. 100%.
You let yourself get into your own mind and make it worse.
Awesome. And another thing too, another like little fun fact that I never knew, like I never knew Silent Hill was, because I knew like Resident Evil and everything was based off the video game, but I never knew Silent Hill was based off of the Konami video game until I seen your little statue with the pyramid head.
And I'll let you know something you may not even know the way you said that. That video game, that movie is based on a real place. It's Centralia is the name of the town. I believe it's in Pennsylvania. Brief, history lesson. Small town, they had a dump. It was getting full, so they decided to burn it off. Let it burn for a day or two, doused it with water. Well, problem being, this town was a mining town. It was an old mining town. When they burned it, it heated up that coal. It caught that coal on fire underground, and it actually started burning all these caves they had dug out for mines. And they have tons and tons of coal still in them. So literally over time, this town had a fire completely engulfed underneath the city. It was releasing steam. It was releasing, carbon monoxide.
All the ash.
The ash. It had sinkholes. It had roads collapsing. And if you watch the movie, that happens. There's roads collapsing. There's this whole, foggy, steamy area, and all that's really based on a real place. If anybody wants to look up of it,
cool.
It's called Centralia. And it's really an interesting place, and something a lot of people don't know. And a lot of this stuff is based on some kind of true story, which is really cool when you actually look into it, further than just the surface of what you see in a movie. That stuff really interests me, and kind of helps me concentrate on other stuff. That learning.
Well, it's nice though, because there's a reality in the terror that exists.
There is, and something that's kind of cool, or really it's, I don't want to say cool, it's interesting to think that town probably could have been saved. Last I looked, now this has been years ago, there was 16 people in that community that just refused to leave. 16, and I'm sure it's dwindled down a whole lot more than that, and the government allowed them to stay, but they cannot pass down their property. When they die, that's it. The government owns it. But the town probably could have got fixed had there been immediate action. The city council, town council, whichever you want to consider that, messed around. Oh, well, let's look into our avenues we could do. Well, let's look into the cost. Well, this costs too much. Let's figure out how to do this. And the entire time this is going on, these fires are progressing into the town. So they basically waited so long. I think they said that maybe $1,000 was going to be the original cost to try to contain this, to the point they messed around again. I think this was back in the 70s. It went up to like $60,000 or $75,000 from just a couple thousand that didn't work till they had to go even more. And they messed around to the point of being cheap that the entire town had to be evacuated. And that kind of comes down a little bit to police work. You have to make a quick decision sometimes to help a situation from getting worse.
And that's another thing too. And, going back to the whole comply mentality aspect of it, to where, how do you calmly get somebody to vacate a home that's been there that's been theirs for years, to protect them. A lot of times it's out of sight, out of mind. Like down here in Florida, hurricane season, it's like, fuck, I'm not going anywhere. If it gets me, it gets me. And it's like, well, how do you, having to protect the community, because sometimes, residents remaining can harm, the safety and well-being of others around them. And, they may not see it that way, but, the jobs of law enforcement is to evacuate. And it does play a large role in that. It's like, hey, how do we do this in an effective, efficient manner, and a timely manner, especially, and getting everybody evacuated in a safe, calm manner in a hurry,
Yeah.
So.
And I get, hey, my property's my property, certain stuff means stuff to me. But at the same time, when I run back into a house to get it, or when I refuse to leave a dangerous situation, I'm putting more people at risk because they have to come in after me. So now, not only am I in danger, I'm endangering them to come in and save me. How many times do you hear about officers, firemen, any kind of emergency personnel dying to try to save somebody? And a lot of those times, it was preventable. They could have saved themselves and kept that from even having to happen.
Well, that too, and a lot of individuals, and especially in an instance like with fire, it's, they go in there to pull an individual out. That individual wants to try to scurry to go get a belonging or something like that. That's, irreplaceable, or, a kitten that might be upstairs on the third floor. And it's, they're jeopardizing the life of the fireman or anybody else, law enforcement officer that's coming in there to try to, pull them from that home. And it's, split second decisions that, could be preventable.
Yeah. And given, my photos are not replaceable. Kids' toys that mean something to me are not replaceable. Neither is that life coming through that door to pull me out of that residence replaceable. And it I don't even want to say that, but it does. You've got to think, hey, there's other people that's risking their life to come in and save me because I came in to save some pictures.
Yeah. And well, you could have done more, Officer Hall. You could have done more. It's like, okay.
Yeah. You could have, what do you want me to do? Go in and tase them and drag them out? I mean,
tase the cat.
Oh my God, I shouldn't say this. I'll tell you a story. This is horrible. So it's embarrassing, really, but I will tell it for entertainment's sake. When I worked with the sheriff's office, we're a fairly rural county. Well, we had a call of several cows out. It's more common than you think. But we were driving by. I got all of them in just by driving by them. I think it was only like a 2-row electric fence. All of them got in except for this one little defiant, like we just discussed, little defiant thing. Okay, when you take the cartridge out of a taser, it's a stun gun. It's like, you stick it to somebody's skin and it hurts like hell. It's the old school stun guns is what it is. It doubles. But a lot of times when you take the cartridge out and you hit it, that popping noise will scare an animal. A lot of times it'll scare a dog. It'll scare an animal. My mindset is I'm going to do that. It's going to scare this cow because it's right at this fence line. I'm kind of trying to cut it off. It's going to run across the fence. Okay. Makes sense, right? In my trying to drive my patrol car, trying to get my taser out, trying to think about is what I'm doing dumb or not. It was, by the way. I forget to take the cartridge out of my taser. I shoot this cow with the prongs from a taser. And now it went in. It went in a hurry. But now I have to explain to my sheriff why I am short a cartridge for my taser. That I tased the cow is why. He did not like that idea. I did not like him that either, but what am I going to do? Hide it? And then a farmer calls, hey, why do I have prongs in my cow? Well, I forgot to tell you about this story.
Thought the cartridge was out, but
and that's one of my kind of embarrassing stories, but I will. It did happen. I will tell it for entertainment's sake. For my own.
Well, I mean, to kind of go with it. I mean, did it get the job done? You're trying to do by just kind of scaring it.
It did. It got it back in there.
Well, it's purpose served, I guess. So I mean, it's a kind of a win-ish.
Ish is a very good way of saying that. But I'm kind of running out of time, but I still have material that I want to cover, in a later segment. I
want to make this as frequent as possible, because I mean, and again, going back to the humanizing aspect of this all, I love you being open about, sharing some of the personal stories that you've experienced, some of the embarrassing moments, as you even say. I mean, it's stuff like this that more officers, more first responders, more dispatchers need to do to kind of get that heaviness, off of their shoulders and things like that. And because it humanizes it, makes it know, hey, we're real people too, and everything else too, man. I mean, it's a blessing that you allot me the time to speak with you. I'll have you on here as frequently as possible. I mean, if, depending on shift, I mean, if we wanted to, kind of block out a specific day each week, a couple days each week, specific times, we get this whole segment going, because I also have this. So after each video, I run it into a podcast format as well too, to where it's audio only. So if individuals wanted to like kind of listen to it on a drive, or kind of, because it's on Spotify, I have it on RSS, I have it actually on my Truth website, the streaming Truth, are these videos.
So
and
no,
then
talk to everybody now.
Yeah, and it's just and then the podcast is actually to where they can just like listen and stream the actual the actual audio of it. They can play it into their tunes. They can download it, whatever the case may be, and then so they could just have all of your segments. And what I'll do is, as these keep going on, I'll group it all together to where it's just segment after segment of strictly just the different experiences that you've shared, different strategies that you utilize to kind of overcome the stresses and things like that you face, and different hobbies, and just sharing real life shit that kind of makes it more bearable a lot of times.
And I'm not calling anybody out in case they're watching this, but it goes for a lot of people. Some people want to help others, help their friends, help others. Make time for yourself as well, because if you're stressed out and you're beyond your mental capacity to help somebody else, you're not able to help them, and you're tearing yourself down.
And on top of that too, like the mental frustration that we have of, our bills, our family, our jobs, everything else. And then all of a sudden we're trying to help somebody else, the pressure of all of their shit going on, we can become bitter, or just, say things the wrong way that we didn't mean them, and we're doing more harm to them than we're doing good. So that's a great point. I'm glad you just said that.
And you're deteriorating yourself along with it. You may not realize it until a certain point, but the bad part is, if you let yourself to that certain point, it's kind of hard to recover from that. It's really hard to recover from that. So like we were just discussing, make time for yourself, however it need to be. If it's like, look, asshole, I'm gonna have time to myself. I need this. You can deal with our problems wherever you need to. That it comes to a point, hey, that's for your good mental health, that you just have to make that time. Which is kind of why I went into the things that I do and what I can do to try to de-stress, because if I'm worn down, it's hard for me to help anybody, much less try to help myself recover from it.
And another thing too, I know you're like, taking notes on pages and everything. A lot of phones, you have a voice recorder. Start like recording certain thoughts. Whether you're driving or sitting at your house, or if something wakes you up at night, open the voice recorder on your phone and just speak it. And then, sometimes hearing yourself later on of what you just read into that voice recorder, it's therapy in itself, plus it helps you actually have talking points later on. And then also with like this platform, if you ever wanted to pre-record yourself on something that you wanted to share with somebody, I'll give you access to this platform where you could just come on and just record a show, or just different thoughts. And then we'll broadcast that, and then we'll hold a show for follow-up questions of what people like heard about the different things that you said. And we can have a question and answer show, based on the broadcast that you did, just by yourself.
Yeah. And like I said, I wrote down a lot, but a lot of mine was on the spot. Hey, I want to do a podcast and I want to try to talk about this stuff. And stuff that I've wrote down is page after page after page. And this is stuff I've come up with off the bat. So I can imagine some of the talking points that I could really come up with if I did do stuff on the spot.
That's impressive.
And there's this. I try to cover everything so I don't forget stuff I do want to cover.
Hey, that's one of the benefits that, we complain in law enforcement about having to write reports, but then, hey, it's training us for writing shit like that down,
And real quick before I get off here, and this is really kind of on a serious note, a personal note. You were talking about a voice recorder, and somebody had mentioned this, had a family member pass away that I know. and had made a post about this on Facebook, and it's really, really ringing true that you need to have messages from people that matter to you. You need to have voice recordings, save them, when you get them, because if something does happen to them, then it's a very personal way to reminisce about them, especially if you can hear their voice, and something that I didn't really have access to because my mother died, I guess, about 18 years ago. That's a long time regardless, but I didn't really have the access to text messages, voicemails on cell phones and stuff like that. But I realized a while back, my defense is to try to put stuff out of sight, out of mind. It's not a good defense. I'm working on it, but that was it for a long time. And I realized I have done that so much that I cannot even remember my mom's voice anymore. That's a tough thing to realize. So, I can't change that, but it's something I can try to get out there for people to think about. That is something I need to keep. That is something that may mean a whole lot, even if it's just calling, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to go eat? That can really hit home when something happens and you have that.
And I've purposely kicked people to voicemail that I knew were falling ill, or it sounds morbid, but I purposely kicked them to voicemail so that I had that recording. And I can't believe you just said it like that, because it's perfect. It really is. Because one of my regrets, to kind of share some personal things as well too, is I've always stored letters. I prefer letters over photographs because it's explaining the moments. But I felt susceptible to what you just said as well too, to where I'm reading the letters, and back when that voice was still fresh, it was if they were reading it to me. But because of that lapse of time, the voice is non-existent, and it really is painful. And a lot of people are like, oh, hey, that's just BS, whatever the case is. But that does become painful through the course of time, especially in grieving processes, because regardless of amount of time passed, when something was meant so much to us, whether it be family, whether it be an item, whether it be anything, 20 years, 50 years isn't ever going to fucking make me forget about some of the individuals that I've lost in my life. And then me having to have that realization that I no longer can remember their voice, their smell, the feel of their touch, or anything like that. It's painful. It really is. So then I get even more depressed when I read the letters, because I can't play that voice in my head. It sucks, man.
And that you mentioned letters, in all honesty, about the only thing I have left from her physically is a letter from her to her sister, which has also passed away. That kind of means a lot to me, even though it's not to me. It shows me pure emotion from her to her sister. It's not something she's trying to relay to me directly. I can feel the emotion that she had connected to, her sister, and that really.
I don't want to go into like our last conversation about the viewers, about you were talking about like some of the struggles that that mom had and things like that, but being able to know another side, or seeing emotion outside of the struggles, which unfortunately you had to bear witness to and stuff like that as well too. So I mean, it seems little to a lot of people, but there's such magnitude to certain things like that, memorabilia, that it's just and I tell people all the time, like the reasons why I've started nonprofits, the reasons why I selflessly give to people, and I do things for free, and I just try to promote other people's like well-being. It's because of the loss I've sustained, and I value meaning something every time, and trying to encourage other people to make that value in somebody else's life, and have that memorable moment, and like have different leeways you can go back and kind of read that to where it's never really forgotten. And if nobody's really dead if my daily actions are reflecting as if they were still here with me. They're still alive, and that's just what I encourage everybody. And a lot of people are like, well, no, they're still not here, but yeah, they are. If I go to a park, or if I go to a restaurant that I used to go to with a loved one, a friend, or whatever the case is that I lost, I can still share that moment as if they're still there. I mean, even though physicality isn't there, it's still, there. And the same thing with like suicide prevention and stuff like that. There are ways that, physicality doesn't always have to be present, memories or, things like that to kind of keep ourselves, or another voice, call somebody else that can kind of relate that may have been in that same moment or something, so it's vital.
And that's everything we do is create memories. And there's a reason.
Yes, sir. And that's why, like, and also, I mean, outside of that, I mean, outside of even like your personal circle and stuff like that, John, it's like, every subject that you run into every day, it's you're making a memory with them as well too. And just like you said, that we're, the reason why you've never had the negative lashback is because of how fair, how just, and just how human you are in dealing with those individuals. So you're creating memory for them. Oh yeah, 20 years from now. Yeah, about 20 years ago, I was back there. I was drinking out there, and this old Officer Hall came up to me and was, there's going to be a story to be told. You know what I mean? And you're creating memories, and we create, whether it is good, bad, or in between. So.
And my interaction and giving them a memory really could make the difference in their entire view of law enforcement.
Exactly.
That officer, the first time they've ever dealt with an officer, he was an asshole. Now that's my whole thought about officers is they're all assholes. So, that can make, being nice to somebody can make a whole lot more difference than what you think on the surface.
And stuff. I made a post earlier, and it's one of the things that I was getting at about like knowing history and stuff like that, because we can't combat. It's I say this about people that feel that they're discriminated against, that are profiled against, or anything like that. It's like, well, we'll do the opposite. Prove people wrong. And it's the same thing with us in law enforcement, first responders, military, and everything else like that. If we start taking and just doing little things, and we're not going out of our way to do it, if I'm on patrol and I just happen to just go stop at a playground or something like that and throw a ball with a kid, or just, stop by and knock on somebody's door, I don't need anything. I was just calling to make sure, see how you're doing. Say, hey, it sounds stupid, but it's little things like that does change the way that people view an individual or the group as a whole. I mean, it's, one person really can change the outlook on, how society views individuals, cultures, races, law enforcement, first responders, military, everything.
Well, I had some instances where a child, say 4, 5, 6. I'll give you one example. I had went to do a welfare check on a girl. She had a girl. She was probably about 5 years old, and she had a smaller child with her that she was holding. Everything was fine. The girl had ran up to me and asked me where my police hat was. I don't have one, whatever. The end of that was it, simple. Well, she ran off to replace that. When I started to leave, she started yelling at me to wait. She ran over to me and gave me a hug, kissed me on the cheek, and that was it. So small, simple action. I've had other instances where the kids really like police. They wanted to give me a hug before I left. Small action. I don't think anything about it. But what if I had refused? No, I'm not hugging you. I'm not hugging your kid. I don't have to say, there's nothing I have to say with them. I'm not here because of them. Right. That can make a huge, huge difference in the parent's life, especially in the kid's life. Hey, this person that I really like, I really look up to was rude to me. He was mean to me. And, I don't like them anymore. I don't like police because of that. And you really got to kind of think the effect.
That's a great point, John. That really is. That's a great point.
But I'm about out of time. But I covered a lot of things I did want to cover. I've still got more to cover. But I think it was a pretty good variation.
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate you being so open about your own personal life. I mean, that really means a lot, and I'm sure it means a lot to a lot of the viewers as well too. Because it's just it really needs to be addressed, and it is humanizing, and it is those little steps that do matter, and it kind of changes the culture of law enforcement, first responders, and military. It really does. So again, thank you so much, and just let me know when you're available again, and if we can kind of talk after this and things like that. But if I'll give you access to where, I have 3 or 4 different platforms that you may be able to utilize, this one especially, to where if you just wanted to first thing in the morning log on and just do your own personal video, we could air that and then, have like a segment to where we tell individuals, hey, think of some comments, questions, and things like that to ask. And then we'll schedule it to where we have a question and answer session and things like that as well, too. Start getting more engagement and stuff, too.
Yeah, and I'm all for that. Anything that somebody wants to add questions, I mean, that just adds to, hey, that may jar my memory of, yeah, this stuff happened I didn't even think about. And I'm all for that. And hopefully our next session, I won't have to be driving a DeLorean.
I can get there now. A quick question. Are you able on your side to see the views that come across?
I'm not. All
the
I can
comments. Do you see the comments?
Yeah, I see them on yours. All I see is just you and I on this.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to. That's what I got to figure out how to do, is how to adjust it to where you see that, because like Kayla made a comment and stuff like that, on here, and that's who I was responding to when I was like kind of talking into the phone. So I got to figure out how to get you the live feed. I probably got to do it because I set it up now to where Facebook Live can see it. Plus, I have it on the StreamYard platform, so I have to get it to where I guess I grant the guest permission visibility of the different, because like. All right. So, thank you all for joining me today. Stay tuned. There you are. Yeah, so I mean, I want you to be able to see like those comments as well too, because a lot of them are directed towards you and questions and comments and things. So that's one of the things I'm going to look into after this, because I thought you could see these already. So I don't know if the Facebook Live part, if I have to grant the guest permission to be able to see the comments or something like that, but we'll keep tweaking it each time as we grow it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe and stay blessed in all things, brother.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Always, it's a pleasure.
Bye.